Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Korean Studies Seminar Series. Today, I know it's a final week and most of you are pretty occupied with final exams and assignments. So I really appreciate sharing your time for joining us today. Today we have Dr. Yoon Ji-sung from South Korea. He will give a presentation about electoral politics of South Korea. So let me just quickly introduce our special guest today, and then I will hand it over to him. Dr. Yoon Ji-sung, he's currently assistant professor at Daegu Gyeongbuk Institute of Science and Technology, which is located in Daegu, one of the largest city in South Korea. He also had a PhD in political science from Seoul National University, and he majored electoral politics, party politics, and voting behavior. And he published numerous articles about South Korean politics in major journals in South Korea and international journals. And today he's going to give us a presentation about the regional voting of South Korea and the changes of the voting pattern after the democratization of South Korea. Since some of you may heard of that, since we had recently had a by-election in April, so I think we can have some chance to ask questions to Dr. Yoon about the electoral politics in South Korea. And I assume that many students are not well aware of the electoral politics of South Korea. So I'm sure that this will be a great chance for you to learn about how elections are happening in South Korea and how people actually vote and participate in politics in South Korea. During the presentation, please turn off your microphone. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the chat and we will get back to your questions after the presentation. And approximately about 30 minutes of a presentation and 30 minutes of a discussion will follow. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Yoon. Please welcome Dr. Yoon, and it's all yours now.
Thank you, and I would like to thank you, Korean Studies Center and Nazarbayev University, for giving me a great opportunity to present my paper. And today's topic is the change of regional voting in South Korea after democratization. Yeah. I will share my presentation file. Before I start to present my paper, I think audience is not familiar with the concept regional voting, except Korean audience and Dr. Park and Dr. Go. Because it is the main concept of this presentation, so I will explain this firstly as a background knowledge. The regional voting is a feature. Regional voting is a feature of Korean election. However, it begins not that far away from now. It begins after 1987 democratization. So it started almost 35 years before. Before 1987, South Korea was authoritarian regime. So political structure of South Korea was democratic group versus authoritarian group. So political behavior of South Korea was somewhat different after 1987 democratization. The major voting pattern was in Korean word 여소야대. It means that ruling party wins in rural area, but opposition party wins in urban area. So it's because educational level of rural area voter was much lower than urban area voter. So from 1960s to 1980s, South Korea experienced high economic performance. on average, GDP grows up almost 10% every year because of industrialization. So many people moved from rural area to city like Seoul and Busan, etc. So these people worked as a factory worker and they experienced unreasonable reality of South Korea. They support our labor unions, but authoritarian regime suppressed this labor movement. And also, educational desire of Korea was very high from Joseon dynasty because of Confucian culture. In spite of Korean War in 1950, people thought education is the key to rise their social status, especially urban education level grows up fast, and it is indirect factor of 1960 democratic revolution. And after 1961 coup, authoritarian regime had continued, so many people having middle school and high school and college level education thought it was unreasonable. And authoritarian regime suppressed democratic movement, but and they advocate this because of North Korea's threat during Cold War era. So voting in urban area have higher education level compared with those of rural area. So ruling party of authoritarian regime won election in rural area, but opposition party won in urban area. And another one was in Korean word, 도저촌고. It means turnout rate is low in urban area, but that is high in rural area. In this period, demonstration for direct presidential election was failed owing to authoritarian regime. So voter having high education in urban area did not feel political efficacy, so it led to low turnout rate. And in 1980, important political event occurred at Gwangju city. After the death of dictator Park Chung-hee, the commander of military intelligence unit, Jeon Do-hwan, commit to seize the power. Under martial law, demonstration began in Gwangju. Gwangju is the major city of Honam region. So Jeon Do-hwan ordered to suppress the demonstration using special force unit. So political massacre occurred in Gwangju city. And almost thousands of people killed by military forces. It has been the historic trauma of border in this region. So the conservative party, it is the successor party of authoritarian regime, did not beg for forgiveness until August 2020. And after 1987 democratization, democratic group versus authoritarian group structure disappeared, and then emerged regional voting behavior. Yeah. In 1987, a major political figure represented their hometown area. Famous democratization leader Kim Il-sung's hometown was PK region, and it is an acronym of Busan and Gyeongnam. Yeah. Another famous democratic leader, Kim Dae-jung's hometown was Honam region, and the dictator Jeon Do-hwan and his successor Roh Tae-woo's hometown was TK region. So it is an acronym of Daegu and Gyeongbuk region. And Yeongnam region consists of TK region and PK region. And another famous figure, Kim Jong-pil, and he is a successor of dictator Park Chung-hee, and his hometown was Chungcheong region. So the first direct election after 1987 democratization was 13th presidency election. So the election result like this. This source is from Korean Wikipedia, and this figure shows the winner of all electoral districts. This one is all district. So this region is TK region, Daegu Gyeongbuk, and this region is PK region. Do you see this mouse pointer? And this region is, the yellow region is Honam region, and the green one is, this region is Chungcheong region, and Seoul, and this Gyeonggi and Incheon area is the Seoul metropolitan region. Yes, and so the blue one is winning district of presidential candidate Notae. This is 1987 13th presidential election result. The blue one is winning district of candidate Notae, and the red one is Kim Young-sam, and yellow one is Kim Dae-jung, winning district, and green one is Kim Jong-pil's winning district. And in 13th presidential election, major politicians of their region got most votes in their districts. And it was the beginning of regional voting. And in 1990s, important political event occurred, so-called in Korean word, 삼당 합당. It means three-party integration, and the President Notae experienced divided government as a result of 13th congressional election in 1988. So he want to get out of unfavorable political circumstances. So he negotiated other political leader, Kim Young-sam and Kim Jong-pil. And as a result, three parties united under the name Democratic Liberal Party. So politically, TK region and PK region united Yeongnam region. So this one is 14th presidential election in 1992. The blue one is winning district of Kim Young-sam, and red one is Kim Dae-jung. Yeah. And the Seoul and Honam region. Here is Gwangju. Yeah. So, and green one is Jung Ju-young, and he is a strong third-party candidate. And I will definitely define the strong third-party candidate. It means if the candidate of third party gets more than 15% vote share, under election law of South Korea, National Election Commission returns full cost of election if the candidate gets more than 15% vote. So, and the famous political figures, three Kim, such as Kim Young-sam, Kim Dae-jung, and Kim Jong-pil, were major political leaders in South Korea. And Kim Young-sam won the 14th presidential election, and the Kim Dae-jung won 15th presidential election in 1997. The green one is winning district of Kim Dae-jung, and the pale blue one is the candidate Lee Hwae-chang in Conservative Party, and the dark blue one is candidate Lee In-jae from the strong third party candidate. Yes. And 2002, 15th presidential election was a new test board of social and South Korean politics, because the retirement of three Kims, Kim Dae-jung, Kim Young-sam, and Kim Jong-pil, it means a new hope of change in regional voting behavior. Many scholars criticized regional voting behavior because politicians use regional cleavage strategy for their political purpose. In general, major parties of South Korea in 1990s were not that different in policy spectrum, except attitude against North Korea. There were little difference in economic and social policies in between parties. It's unlike Europe. The ideological party have not developed it up to now because parties have regional basis. So politicians get electoral profit using regional cleavage strategy. So my research question is, this is the 2016 presidential election, and this one is 17th presidential election. This one is 18th presidential election, and this one is 19th presidential election. So my research question is, how can we objectively measure and explain the political phenomenon of weakening of regional voting behavior and the emergence of generational cleavage in Korean presidential election after 2002? The regional voting literature is one party insisted regional voting behavior weakens after 2002, and other party insists the regional cleavage of South Korea is still robust. And also some scholars insist generational cleavage is replacing regional cleavage after 2002, and other scholars still insist characteristic change of generational cleavage. So I want to test the change of regional voting hypothesis. So I use cross-pressure concept. This is a cross-pressure concept. In early election literature, the Columbia School used this concept to explain non-partisan voting behavior. So cross-pressure occurs in a situation which internal conflict arises as various of group, they belong to collide with each other. And this is Diana Mutz, the American political scientist, explained this psychological mechanism like this figure. And voter who feels cross pressure experience interpersonal conflict avoidance, and this avoidance can lead to intrapersonal ambivalence, and it calls to lower political participation and late voting decision. Or the interpersonal conflict avoidance can directly cause to lower the political participation and late voting decision. And this old concept of Columbia School is equipped with new measure and cross-pressure score. I will call this as CPS. And this one is the American political scientist, Ted Brader and co-authors developed a new method for measuring cross-pressure concept empirically. And this makes an operational definition of cross pressure. This is the cross pressure. It occurs in a situation in which partisan pressure of various social groups to which individual belongings are acting in opposite direction and experiences internal conflict. And for social groups, they use democratic variables such as gender and education and age and income and religion and region, etc. And I will give you a typical example. In election researches, in terms of class, the labor class voter usually tend to support progressive party, but capitalist class voter tend to support a conservative party. In terms of age, young group such as 20s and 30s tend to support progressive party, and older group such as 60s tend to support conservative party, and it is so-called age effect. Then how about old capitalist class voter? And we could expect he or she is likely to vote conservative party because capitalist class tendency and old age tendency reinforce the conservative party tendency. But and how about old labor class voter? And we could expect he or she experienced cross pressure because progressive tendency from labor class and conservative tendency from old age collide with these two tendency. So I will explain the measurement the procedure of cross pressure score. This is number one, step one, the estimate the relationship between democratic characteristics and partisan preference through regression analysis. And step two is for each individuals generate predicted probability of supporting each party or candidate using the result obtained in step one. And step three is summarize the extent of such cross pressures by calculating the variance in predicted probability across parties for each individual. And last step is step four, rescale this value as needed and reoriented it so higher score indicate greater cross pressure, and thus it produces an individual specific cross pressure score. If you feel this is too difficult, then just keep it. Yeah, just keep it. And the reason we need step four is we can understand easily if you see example figure. I will use previous same example. Let's think old labor class voter case. In this case, he or she experienced cross pressure. So we just think voting probability of right party is 0.45, and the voting probability of left party is 0.55. His difference between two parties is 0.1. It's very small value, but he experienced high cross pressure situation. So you subtract this difference from 1 because this is probability. So the range of probability is from 0 to 1. So I use this procedure. Now, after rescaling, the cross pressure score is 0.9 because this one is 0.1 this difference 0.1, and we can subtract this from 1. So the cross pressure score is now 0.9. So large value means high cross pressure, and it is more intuitive than step 3 result. So, and one more step is to compare this value with other one in terms of time series, the standardized these values. So, and the standardization procedure is you subtract mean from individual specific cross pressure score and divide this value by standard error. And my hypothesis is in the presidential election after 2012, even within the Yeongnam region, the cross pressure between TK region and PK region will be different. So this also expect regional cleavage in Yeongnam region reduced to the TK region. To analyze this, I will introduce my data and variable and method. And data period is 14th presidential election in 1992 to 19th presidential election in 2017. And my paper covers from 14th to 18th presidential election in 2012, but I update 19 presidential election data. The reason 13th presidential election in 1987 was missing is that Korean election survey started from 1991. So the earliest one is 14th presidential election. And I use KSDC survey data and EAI panel survey data. And KSDC election survey is the longest survey series, but the number of respondents is just 1,200. And EAI panel data is more qualified one because the number of respondents is much more than KSDC, and also it is panel data. So let's move to the next regression result. This is the summary of step 1. In this regression result, we can find out AGN, the regional variable, among all independent variable is statistically significant in every elections. And these 3 stars beside coefficient means statistically significant at 90% level, and 2 stars means statistically significant at 95% level. And the 14th and 15th and 17th and 19th presidential election, there was a strong third party candidate in 14th election, candidate Jung Ju-young, and 15th candidate Lee In-jae, and 17th president election, the strong third party candidate Lee Hwae-chang, and 19th president election, candidate An Cheol-soo was the strong third party candidate. And the 16th and 18th is the 2-party election. So there was a strong third party candidate election. I used multinomial logistic regression, and from 14th presidential election after the 3-party integration, we can find out Honam region is very significant in every election. But this one and this one is not significant, but this one is, and this one is for a third party candidate, and this one, and this one, and this one, this one, and this one is the major candidate between two major party. But Yeongnam region is not significant in 18th presidential election anymore. So I split Yeongnam region and TK and region and PK region. So in 18th presidential election, Yeongnam region and PK region is not significant, but TK region coefficient is still very significant. And it means Yeongnam regional cleavage was reduced to TK region, and from 18th presidential election in 2012, it also as same as 19th presidential election in 2017, and TK region coefficient is significant, statistically significant, but PK region is not significant. And we could interpret this result that PK region's voting pattern is going to be not that different from Seoul, Gyeonggi, Incheon region. It's called Seoul metropolitan area voting pattern, because the base of region variable is Seoul, Gyeonggi, Incheon region. So, and if you see the table of 19th presidential election and Honam region coefficient is not statistically significant, and standard error value is too much big. And it's because 19th presidential election was held after the impeachment against President Park Geun-hye. In Honam region, Conservative Party of the descendant of authoritarian regime got under 10% vote share in general. In 19th presidential election, Conservative Party supporting President Park Geun-hye got the smallest vote share compared with previous election. So the number of respondents who support Conservative Party in Honam region is almost zero in KSC survey. So I think coefficient and standard error of Honam region is abnormal like this. Let's look at next figure. This shows changing trend of cross pressure. X-axis means year and election year, and Y-axis means standard cross pressure score. So now I will call this standard CPS as this score standard CPS. Using acronym CPS. So, and the value of standard CPS is 0, the yellow line. It means it is the average cross pressure of all respondents. So 0 means national average, and the negative value like this means low cross pressure, and positive value means high cross pressure. The trend line slope, look at this trend line slope. The blue one, blue triangle means Honam region, and this trend line is Honam regional trend line. The red dot is the Yeongnam region CPS, and this trend line is for Yeongnam region. So this graph shows cross pressure of two regions is going up, and specifically the slope of Honam region is steeper than the Yeongnam region, but Honam CPS is still lower than this CPS is still lower than Yeongnam region in every election. And the next figure is different from previous one because I analyzed TK region and PK region. The green one is TK region and red diamond is PK region, and the Honam region is still same, the blue triangle. And in this figure, CPS slope of TK region is almost flat, but that of PK region is steeper than previous Yeongnam region. And also, trend line of PK region is close to zero at 2017. And we can interpret the cross pressure of PK region is close to national average and is going to the something different from previous elections. And the next figure shows changing trend of Honam region CPS by age group, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. The CPS of all age group is very low and almost same value in 1997 and 2002 is almost same in every age group. But 2007 election, the gap of the age group is smaller than the larger than age group. The difference of age group increases, and the age gap of age group is much bigger than 2012 election. Specifically, the CPS of 60s is over zero, and in the 2017 election, the gap of age group is smaller than 2012, but CPS of 60s is still over zero. So it's interesting. And the next one is the CPS of TK region by age group. In TK region, the pattern of age group continues more or less until 2012 election, and CPS difference of age group was largest in 2012. But in 2017 election, age pattern is somewhat different from previous election. CPS of 20s goes down, and that of 30s is almost same as previous election, and that of 40s and 50s goes up steeply. And this effect of presidential, the effect of president impeachment may influence this situation. And the last figure of CPS of PK region, we can find out CPS of PK age group is already high in 2002 election, and age pattern is messy from 2012 election. And this shows the course of systematic pattern of PK region. So it goes to national average, and it's different from previous regional voting pattern. And the conclusion is I used the standard CPS, and this make it possible to compare Korean election survey data in terms of time series. And regional cleavage in Yeongnam region reduced to TK region is the finding of this paper. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if you have any questions, please leave them on the chat so Dr. Yoon and everyone can see and read it, and he will answer your questions. Okay, so well, I think it's an interesting finding, but today's audience is not well, not very well aware of what is going on in South Korean voting, and also some of the technical terms during the presentation may get a bit confusing or not very approachable. But yeah, in general, you can ask, I think Dr. Yoon can answer any questions about South Korean politics in general, in terms of the elections and voting. So maybe, well, he briefly mentioned, introduced some of the backgrounds of the regional voting. But if you still have questions about that, feel free to ask it. Okay, so let me just start with the questions. Okay, so I have several questions, in fact. So I was a bit distracted. So can you explain the measure of this standardized CPS? What does this negative value mean? What does positive value means? And I understand it is standardized around 0, which is the national average. So what does negative value mean and positive value means?
Negative value means the low cross pressure. So it's their group value or group pattern means, so in my example, you can show this, the low CPS means labor, the class voter is support Progress Party, and young groups support Progress Party. So they don't have the feeling, the confused or something like from pressure feeling from the social group. So low cross pressure is like this, but the high positive value means high cross pressure. So there's it means I think like,
so in my
example,
yeah. So in my understanding, positive and negative does not necessarily mean certain directions. So it's just a scale, right?
Yes, scale.
Okay, so if it's a negative 0.5, which is a small CPS, low CPS, so the voter has less conflict when they decide which candidate they vote for.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, see.
That's right.
So when you show us this graph over time, right? So comparing these two regions, right? So yes, so by region, so TK and PK in Honam. In general, it looks like a Honam shows much lower CPS compared to Yeongnam.
Yes.
Okay, so do you have any explanation for, I know this is driven by the data, yes, but in a substantive meaning, what does it mean? Why Honam people has a low level of a CPS compared to Yeongnam voters who has a high? It literally means that, well, Yeongnam voters has more conflict when they make decision at the polling station compared to Hona people, right? So what is the story behind this difference?
I already explained. I already mentioned Gwangju, the democratic movement in 1980s, the historic trauma of Conservative Party and is the successor of authoritarian regime. So they don't vote for Conservative Party because they did not beg forgiveness until 2020. So it's the strong voting pattern of Honam region, and they don't feel about the between two major party. They just vote Liberal Party, the Democratic Party, something like the descendant of that parties, because the Korean party make the name very frequently. So the party's colors in Korea is familiar, but the foreign country in party's color in Korean politics is very confused about the name. But the Democratic Party is Liberal Party and or the Progressive Party in Korea, and because of the Gwangju massacre, so the Honam regional voter just vote Democratic Party until now. Yes, but TK region or PK region and also Yeongnam region, the voters feels very confused because the President Roh Moo-hyun's hometown is PK region, and now the Korean President Moon Jae-in's hometown is PK region. So the Kim Yong-sam, the political descendant of Kim Dae-jung and Kim Yong-sam, and the President Roh Moo-hyun's hometown was PK region. So the Yeongnam voter feels cross pressure from this situation. So now the Democratic Party's strategy is in presidential elections of making PK region candidate to the presidential candidate is the former some kind of formal Democratic Party's election strategy. But now I'm not sure about the next presidential election candidate of Democratic Party now, yes, because the governor of Gyeongnam region, Kim Kyung-soo, is not that likely is to next election. So yes, this is the historic the explanation of this phenomenon. Yes.
Thank you. So there's several questions on the chat. So can you address some of those questions, Dr. Yoon?
Chat.
Okay, so I think some students are confused. Is it two-party system, one-party system? And also, well, these are some background information. I think, students are not familiar with the party system in South Korean politics.
Yeah, the party system in Korea is somewhat unstable. So in some periods, the two-party system exists, but in the parties make some negotiation or something. They divided into several parties because of, for example, because of the presidential impeachment of President Park Geun-hye, the Conservative Party divided into two parties, and the Democratic Party divided into two because of some internal conflict of party. So political party system in Korea is not the two-party system, or and yeah, I think it's not two-party system. But now this in 24th National Assembly, the major two-party system is now, but I'm not sure about future Korea political party. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So nowadays we all see that Korean social media advances a lot, like it's literally everywhere. So does it like affect the regionalism, like the voting?
Mhm.
Does social media advancement affect the regionalism?
Social media. I think social media can influence regionalism because the conservative media earns the profit from regionalism in Korean political party, Korean political situation. So 조선일보 or 동아일보 or 중앙일보 is the major conservative media in Korea. They earn many profit from the Korean political situation until now. So they want to use this status or the situation, but I'm not sure because the media environment varies many times. So I do not think this conservative media's major status still continues. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Dr. Yoon, if you see the chat, there are several questions, and one of the question is about the current pandemic situation. So I think some of students heard of the news about South Korean politics these days because of the COVID-19. Some group support the government, Moon Jae-in government, but on the other hand, usually I guess conservative group, they criticize the Moon Jae-in government. And what do you think is this pandemic situation is reinforcing this regional voting behavior? So because of their people's attitude or evaluation about the Moon Jae-in government dealing with the COVID-19, do you think that will bring this regional cleavage again, or they will have no impact on the regional cleavages?
In election researches, the issue voting is main topic of election. And I think the COVID-19 is the realm of issue voting. And last year, the 20th congressional election, before the election, I think the ruling party is not that familiar with some good political environment because the Secretary of Justice Cho Guk yeah, Cho-guk is the name of Secretary of Justice, former Justice. His the appointment procedure was very conflicting situation from two parties, and in all Korean social situation. So after the President Moon Jae-in's motto is justice, main motto is justice, but in Korea word narrow number, it means the my 내가 뭐로 설명해야 할지 모르겠는데 괜히 얘기했나 이게 I can get from this, but you cannot like this.
Standard, maybe.
Yes. So the last congressional election before COVID-19 situation, Democratic Party, the ruling party of now Korea, is not that positive expectation, but after COVID-19 situation, the Koreans the preparation or Korean government management is very good point of some compare with rest of the world. So ruling party, this Democratic Party wins the election absolutely, 180 seats from 300 seats, almost 60% vote share, the seat share in Congress. But I'm not sure in this time, after just 1 year from last congressional election, the housing problem is the main problem of Korean politics, Korean society, and the I think the job opportunity for younger generation is very narrow in right now, and the economic the growth rate is very low right now, and the in Moon Jae-in government and we did not get the vaccine like Sputnik 5 or Pfizer or Moderna. We did not get this vaccine, not likely other countries. So the evaluation of Moon Jae-in government is going down and down right now, and Moon Jae-in's evaluation is almost the 32% point in the presidential evaluation. So I don't think the last congressional election was issue voting in terms of issue voting, but I'm not sure next year the presidential election. I'm not sure this continues. So yeah, I think like this. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon. So we have used almost an hour now. So let's just pick just one questions for last. Okay, so let's answer. Let's ask him to answer one last question. Okay. Do you have any preference, Dr. Yoon, from those questions on the chat? Any questions you want to ask, answer? So one question is about the South Korea's policy toward North Korea under the U.S. influence. But since given that the Blue House and the Assembly is now in Democrat Party's hands, so both taking this executive and the legislative, what would be the future relationship between North and South Korea? And another question is about like a more general question. So what is your result or anticipation about the South Korean politics in terms of this voting behavior? So the regional voting is declining, and what do you see in the future will be like? And there are some other similar questions about your research per se. So just to pick any questions, and I think that we have a little time for one last question.
Okay.
Or Dr. Park, Professor Park wants to ask a question or choose a question for Dr. Yoon.
I'll just let Dr. Yoon to choose his own question. Answer.
Okay. Okay. I think the voting in Korean politics is somewhat different from Kazakhstan or the many countries. Regional voting is very special feature of Korean politics after 1987 democratization, but it's the problem of Korean politics that the researchers and scholars, the election scholar in Korean politics, criticize the regional voting is the very problem of Korean politics. But I think the voting is still in Honam region and the TK region, but the PK region is going to swing state like the Seoul metropolitan area, but it's very good future of Korean politics. And the issue voting and the voting in terms of policy or some voter ideology is very reasonable for the national people or national voters, because the congressman and president think and they want to win the election, and they want to win the election. They want to make good policies and good laws to the national people, national voters. So I think this trend is very slow, but I think this is a good expectation or good point, or the development of Korean politics. I think, yeah, this is the good signing of Korean politics. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Yoon, and thank you everyone for wonderful questions and your participation today. I think we have to finish the presentation and the seminar now. In fact, this is the last seminar series of the semester, so please give them big applause again, and then I'll hope to see you all again in the next semester with the new topics and new series from Korean Studies Center in Nazarbayev University. So thank you again, Dr. Yoon, and I'm going to close this this Zoom in a minute. And for those who did not see today's session, I'm going to share the recordings of the session as usually we do through the email, and you will see a link to the YouTube of this recording. Okay, so thank you everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
And have a nice day now.
Bye-bye.